Happy Friday! How are you today? I love you and I miss you terribly. Now we are reading Lewis and Clark, A Prairie Dog for President by Shirley Ray Redmond, illustrated by John Manders. As you recall from yesterday, a scout from Lewis and Clark's expedition, their trip, and a scout is somebody who goes on ahead and sees where they should where a good place to camp would be, where a water source would be, and so forth. But they sent one of those scouts back to Washington with the animals and the plants and all the other things. And this is how he went. He got on a ship in New Orleans and went all the way around Florida and all the way up to Baltimore, and that's where we left off. The scout put the animals and other presents in the back of a wagon. He paid the driver to take everything to President Jefferson in Washington, D.C. The president met the wagon at the White House. He picked up the prairie dog cage. "Is that a gopher?" he asked. "No," said the driver. "I think it's a woodchuck." President Jefferson read the letter from Lewis. "A soldier named this creature a prairie dog. It lives on the western prairie and barks like a dog." There's a picture. The president gave the prairie dog a piece of apple. Chomp, chomp, chomp. The prairie dog gobbled it right up. The president laughed. "Americans will want to see this little fellow," he said. "I will send these fine presidents to Mr. Peel's museum." Mr. Peel's museum was in Philadelphia. The prairie dog and the other gifts rode in a stagecoach to the museum. It was a very bumpy ride. Remember, they didn't have roads back then. Just little paths, really. Mr. Peel loved the presents. He sent President Jefferson a thank you note. "The prairie dog is a pleasing little animal. He is not at all dangerous like a groundhog," he wrote. I didn't know groundhogs were dangerous. Mr. Peel put the cage in a sunny room. Children came to see that prairie dog. Artists came to draw its picture. The visitors touched the bison skins and the deer horns. They stared at the magpies. The American West must be a wonderful place. The West is wonderful. Lewis and Clark were gone for 2 whole years exploring it. In November of 1805, they reached the Pacific Ocean. They were heroes. Let me show you where the Pacific Ocean is. This is the Atlantic Ocean over here where the 13 original colonies were. And over here is the Pacific Ocean right there. Okay. They were heroes. If you travel west today, you can still see some of the things they saw. You can see grizzly bears, you can see bison. You can see bison around here. If you go to Woolaroc, there are bison. A big bunch of bison at the Tallgrass Prairie Preserve, which I just went there a few days ago. It's about, from Tulsa, maybe close to 2 hours or so. Yes, because it's about an hour from my house. Pretty cool. Pretty cool. We'll learn more about bison in the 2nd grade and what they do with bison. So you can see jackrabbits and magpies, and if you're lucky, you might even see a prairie dog. There we go. Look at that car on the... Remember, they didn't have cars back in Lewis and Clark's time. And that is the end of our story. Let's read the author's note. "This is a true story, and Lewis and Clark were real explorers. Mr. Peel was also an artist. He painted these pictures of Lewis and Clark and put them in his museum. Today, the museum is called Independence Hall." Independence Hall, as you recall, is where the Liberty Bell is. Remember, the Liberty Bell is a symbol for freedom. There we go. Before I forget, let's do the vocab. Communicate. Say communicate. That means to share thoughts or ideas with someone by talking, writing, or sending a message. When you say something to me, you are communicating. Okay, if I say something to you, I'm communicating to you. Here's our example sentence. When Amani had a very sore throat and couldn't talk, she used pictures to communicate with others. Diary, that's our next word, diary. Diary is a book or journal for writing personal thoughts and experiences. For example, Bess wrote about her day in a diary. It's just like it's a journal. We know what a journal is. Expedition, I mentioned that just a little bit ago. Expedition, a journey or a trip taken for a special reason. Here's our example sentence. The class organized an expedition into the woods to observe the birds. See, Lewis and Clark were on an expedition. Shelters is our next word. Shelters, things that cover or protect people from the weather or danger. When Daniel Boone was traveling along the wilderness road, he built shelters in the woods along the way. So we certainly needed shelter when it rained so hard the other night, didn't we? So something just to cover, to protect you from wind or danger or water, whatever the weather is. Survive means to continue to live. Here's our example sentence. The cactus will survive in the desert even though there's not much rain. So we have learned that Jefferson wanted to have control of the Mississippi River because he wanted to control what went up the river and down the river, up and then down the river. It was much easier to move people and things on a river than over land because there were no roads. Lewis and Clark tried to travel as much on rivers as they could when they explored the Louisiana Territory. Remember, Louisiana Territory was what this area here, pretty much between the Mississippi River and the Rocky Mountains. So this is all this part of our country, including Oklahoma. They wanted to travel by river as much easier. Now, there were three things that Lewis and Clark were looking for. They wanted an all-water route to the Pacific Ocean. Remember, the Pacific Ocean is this ocean right over here. And here's where we are. See? This is the Atlantic Ocean over here, where the colonies, now the states are, or the first states were, rather. Okay. They also wanted to collect samples of animals and plants, and they also wanted to make friends with Native Americans. Those are the three things. Do you think that they completed all three of those tasks by themselves? Why or why not? Think about that. Now, Lewis and Clark had a group of people helping them. They were called the Corps of Discovery. Say that again, Corps of Discovery, to go with them and help them. Listen to find out what kinds of people they looked for to help them. And that is what we are talking about today in our lesson. The title is Lewis and Clark, The Journey Begins. Have a great weekend. I love you. Bye.